As fires burn out from yesterday, a wandering mare's found a better way. For just as night seems most dark, the sunrise comes to warm our hearts.
From the ashes of war, through the blood and the gore, a man once more than this world that is torn. A group that cannot just be stopped or forgot will rise to overcome all odds. And with every new day, through the parts that we play, as we push fear away and remember the ways of a man who was kind and whose words will remind. Do better.
Chapter 5. Old World Money for Old World Machines. Every person has a price. It is just a matter of enduring them to get the price. Richard Nixon. The Pegasus mare looked at me, then to Alguacil, then to Buddy. Each one of us got a good, long, hard stare from her. It was unnerving. She had a way with those soft ruby eyes. There was a hardness, a cynicism to her stare.
I really hope this isn't her. Should I still shoot them or not, Stare? Please, we haven't done anything bad, right? Okay, maybe it is strange. Wait, has no one rebuilt yet? Is that why?
All right, come on in. Just the filly and the regulator.
The Pegasus paused and pointed her wing at us as she spoke.
Assuming you really are what your duster says you are, everyone else stay put.
She declared like it was a military order. I started to move when Alguacil's talons stretched out to stop me.
No, we can talk here, in front of us all.
Alguacil's sentiment echoed with mistrust, thick enough I swore that scissors could cut through the tension. The two guards started raising their rifles to point at us, and just as they got to the point, they would aim down the sight. The mare shrugged.
Fine. We can talk here. You want to explain this to me? From the top?
Only if you want to give us your name first, because we gave you all of ours.
Alguacil shot back.
My mercs call me Queen Bitch, or Queenie. They know how it fixes me.
The grizzled Pegasus sighed, and then gave a broad, power-filled smile.
My name is Sparrow, and yes, I do live up to the nickname.
Sparrow fluttered her wings just enough that she hovered off the ground for a moment, kicking up the dust all around us. Then, she settled back down as another flap of her wings threw some soot into the air to intimidate us.
Now, your story would be nice.
Alguacil started us off, talking about waking up in a pool and giving the location of the raiders. I let out an indignant squeal as he mentioned the pistol exploding. Buddy chimed in about the mole rats and raiders, even up to the part where Bronco had committed suicide by Magnum.
Is that what we're calling it now? Why did it still not feel okay to have executed him? An execution. That is what Alguacil had done.
Nyora spoke up about treating Corner's injury and talked about watching me fix up the earth mover. Finally, as Nyora finished talking about our encounters with Frida Waffles, they all turned to me, as if expecting me to reveal some grand tale or providing an ending that brought all of their stories together. I just told them that the instruction book was in the glove box, and from there it was just a matter of mechanical know-how from my dad's garage before the stables sealed. At this, we were made to pause as the mare held up her wing to stop us.
What do you mean, during the war? You certainly don't look ghoulish to me.
Sparrow stated quite bluntly. She leaned forward and took another examination of me, her eyes rolling over me from snout to tail, like she was looking for some sort of telltale sign of a disease or modification. I hesitated, and then pulled on my stable barding collar to show its number, 43.
I was in and out of stasis. Miss Cheerful Chorus had us learn a lot about Equestria with stories when we were out of stasis. It was kind of like school, except I think Stable Tech made it at her job, whether she liked it or not.
Sparrow gave us a judgmental frown at this explanation.
Stable 43? No one has found that one, at least that I know of. Where is it?
She leaned a bit closer and took a step towards me. The step looked like a combination of curiosity and rebalancing to spring into action at the same moment.
In the mountains north of Stalliongrad.
I gave with blithe certainty. I knew where it was from at the very least. All three of the mercenaries' sets of eyes went wide, bulging from their sockets a bit at the declaration. They took a few moments to exchange glances with each other, and then back to me.
Why am I getting all the attention? I'm just a filly who did what her daddy taught her.
A pre-war filly from a stable nearly 800 miles away, across from the northern wastes or over the ocean, wearing stable tech barding no one has seen before.
Every word Sparrow spoke made me feel more and more like some alien or ancient artifact no one realized existed. She took an inhale and kept talking with a slow, distinctive voice, like a professor explaining a subject not in his book to the class.
Who can fix up a piece of earth-moving equipment pre-war?
The Pegasus turned to the guard that had called her on the radio and snickered.
You know what, Gleamscope? I owe you 25 caps. You found something above all our pay grades?
Sparrow smacked her lips indignantly and then turned back to the rest of us.
You found a pre-war little mare who isn't a ghoul and can apparently fix pre-war machines to boot. I don't know what else to say other than let them on in.
Sparrow turned to walk away. We all stared at them dumbfounded while they opened up the gates as wide as they would go so we could fit our earth mover inside. There was a long pause as Sparrow stopped at the threshold to go into the town.
Call Hornsaw. Tell him he's got a new patient and to take care of. The filly in the box.
Sparrow turned back around to look at me, and her gaze bored into my chest like a dragon ready to strike if I moved wrong.
Sunrise, was it? Pull that piece of equipment inside and park it somewhere. Don't do anything funny with it. We have rifles trained on you when it's moving.
Sparrow stated to us and then gave a salute across her chest with her right wing to the other two guards.
You won't want to end up like them,
she declared, walking away from us and pointing the other wing to the raiders on the wall. I hadn't noticed it before, but now I saw it clear as day. Ponies in barding like Spring Bronco wore. They all had improvised different pieces of leather. They were all dead and nailed to the wall with spikes just to make a point. The one that truly got to me, the one that forced me to actually look away, was the filly amongst those bodies. She didn't even have a cutie mark yet. But there was the corpse of a little filly, so much smaller than me, mounted like a trophy, and a warning.
Sparrow is really just that ruthless. Note to self, don't cross her if we can ever help it.
I felt my stomach lurch as the sickness of looking at those recently deceased forms set in.
I am never going to want to eat now, am I? I keep seeing these things as soon as my stomach might think to remind me that food would be nice.
I had to focus on moving through the gates with the earth mover. I was the only one trained to drive it. She started back up with no issue, with just 2 cranks on the starter, then slid forward. I took the directions from the guards who motioned me through the gates. As the control cabin cleared the walls, I saw the town sign.
Welcome to Silver Fang Shanty.
Nyora took corners over to a deep, burgundy-coated unicorn who welcomed the 2 of them into his operating room. Once I had the digger parked, my tail grabbed keys, and then Chifundo and Buddy escorted me into the merchant's square as quickly as my legs would move. Alguacil had disappeared. He muttered something about the local regulator office. Meanwhile, Chifundo separated from us to negotiate away the various bits of salvage or looted gear we had gotten off the mole rats and raiders, as well as all the other odds and ends we had stumbled into.
How and when they had the time to collect so much, I have no idea. But between the 2 of them, we have at least 100 pounds of gear, hides, and meat. Ugh! Meat! Ponies shouldn't eat that!
Meanwhile, I asked around about anyone who could use the earth mover. Sparrow said we could find someone here, and sure enough, there was a very well-dressed traveling merchant who has been spending a significant amount of caps.
Bottle caps? Caps? Really? That was what we used for money now? Were bits so hard to make? Authenticate? I mean, didn't we literally have millions of them everywhere? But no, sparkle cola caps. Or caps from anything, it seemed, so long as it went on a bottle. I could literally think of 100 things better to use than caps. Buttons, maybe?
The town looked like something out of a Daring Do movie, crossed with a science fiction novel, where savage looks mixed with high technological bits. There were neon signs powered by horse-sized hamster wheels, mixed with metal grabbed from chariots to make shops where ponies in primitive clothing, far from the standard stitches and factory outfits I was used to, negotiated for goods and service. It was like one massive fair or bazaar, except it was the normal everyday routine. No one else seemed to think it was weird. They just moved from stall to stall, from shouting merchant to shouting merchant. Prices were haggled, deals were hammered out, and probably a scam or 2 squeezed in here and there. There was even an auction over a jar of sap apple jam. I walked through the market in amazement, hardly aware of Chifundo just powering ahead. He was eager to sell off all the stuff that we had gotten in the half-finished stable. I paused as a thought struck me.
Had we been looting?
As Chifundo approached and called out to Zebra wearing a fine checkered suit, we got a surprise. His cloak and barding had obscured his skin from us until he turned, and we could see the rotting flesh of a ghoul. He drew up like a proper Canterlot noble, and his cloak, mixed with a clean checkered suit, framed his form like they were tailor-made. He may have the flourish of a gentle stallion, but the mixture of ghoul flesh turned it into just a gross illusion. This one caused my stomach to resume its backflips as I realized how twisted the world had become. The shriveled up flesh didn't match the zebra stripes on him at all. He, unlike Waffles, still somehow had much of his coat. At least the parts of him that were not covered in clothing. From the way he moved and his body reflex, I suspected his barding concealed a lot, and had been padded in places in order to hide where he lacked flesh, muscle, and fat. The smile from him was off-putting. There was a mixture of genuinely being welcomed and what in Equestria is he really thinking? in his expression. I felt some sense of danger creeping over me. Not immediate danger, but I felt as though if I didn't watch him, I might find him doing something uncomfortable. I tried my best not to let it show, to hold it in and not voice my concern. At least for the moment.
You have to give them the benefit of the doubt, just like Dad taught you. Expect the best till they prove otherwise.
He looked at Chifundo and stomped up to him with a practiced swagger that looked straight out of Canterlot from before the stables to me.
Well, hello there. What a cutie.
He joined Chifundo and they moved to speak just outside of earshot. Buddy and I looked on until a pink-striped hoof pointed in my direction. I approached and blushed a bit as the wealthy ghoul zebra and Chifundo watched me intently. Chifundo gestured for me to hurry up, and I then broke into a light trot forward.
Sunrise is the one who made the machine purr. The credit all must go to her.
There was a hint of prideful tone towards me, which only served to make the white blush burn harder against my cheeks. I saw a reflection in the metal shop stand near me. My cheek had flushed white.
I'm...
I stopped and gulped back my embarrassment and nerves.
Wandering Sunrise. I am the one who fixed up the earth mover.
I felt so self-conscious under the gaze of this zebra. Buddy nudged me towards him with a paw pressed onto my flank.
Go on, little darling. Y'all should talk to the zebra here. I'll go get us some supplies.
The way the noble ghoul looked at me made me feel like I was being sized up as more than just a mechanic. He was looking at me, not in the sense of looking at me with his eyes. It was more like desire. It was so strange to realize I was being checked out by a stallion and a stranger. I felt vulnerable, and it made my skin crawl to realize that something that resembled a wasteland monster was almost hitting on me. I felt like I had to keep my guard up and to be prepared to strike him at any moment.
Well, the cuteness continues to adorn me today.
The stallion zebra replied.
I'm the Curator, or Mr. Curator, and you are just adorable.
Okay, something about this zebra creeps me right out. But if he will take that earth mover off us, good. It means we won't attract the attention from everything, especially the creatures that have tried to kill us.
But you will attract attention of a different sort.
That big, rusted, but rather cheerily painted yellow machine is what you're talking about, right?
He took a pause and wiggled his eyebrows at me.
I haven't seen a Sendok 3000 moving in nearly 200 years, I think. That is one very magnificent masterpiece of spell matrix engineering that I sincerely miss hearing rumbling near a building foundation in progress. The Society would be most interested in such a vehicle, and it would be lovely in my collection, especially when I tell them such a beautiful-looking mare in waiting had been the one to fix it up.
Adorable and cute, I could handle. I was used to those. The other flattering words were something different. I felt a sheepish blush at being called beautiful and a mare in waiting. He wasn't doing this the way you would expect an adult stallion to do to a filly. No, this was flirting.
Wait, am I being flirted with? By a ghoul? A rich ghoul, and is probably way older than me, not counting years in stasis. Chifundo, I swear this had better be worth it.
I gave Chifundo a harsh look. The sharpest look I could give when I had turned nearly sunburst white in my blushing cheeks.
Now, do you think you can show me how to operate it? And can I get a test drive in exchange for, say, 50 caps?
He leered intently at me with lecherously flirty eyes. I had no idea, so I looked at Chifundo and motioned my hoof to defer to him. Anything to get the Curator's attention off my form. Chifundo looked at me.
You had best show him the rope. Otherwise, he'll have no hope.
Chifundo replied. I nodded like a shy breezy, and then hoped that the subject could be changed to something besides me.
Well then, filly, Come on, let's talk about the SD-3000. How does she handle? What all work did you have to do to her?
He turned all business as I escorted him over to the SD-3500. Chifundo never strayed away more than a few feet away from me. The following barrage of questions caught me way off guard.
How are the road wheels on her doing?
I mean, they're rusted, but I managed to get them to move, and the tracks are lined up still.
I nervously smiled, having never sold a vehicle before. We walked up to the cabin ramp and stopped just outside.
And her body? Dense? Or firm and pristine like yours?
The Gould wiggled his eyebrows at me suggestively. I felt the burning in my cheeks again and saw the reflection that looked like my original white complexion in the rearview mirror.
Deal with it later. Just get through this. I mean, as good as you could expect for 180 years?
It wasn't just the questions that bothered me. It was how he was asking.
And how does she handle? Like an old gentle colt, or like the bouncy little spring filly you are?
His flank brushed against my side, right where the barding ended. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I was so thankful to be able to open the operator's door and focus on something else. The cabin was incredibly cramped with both of us in it. I started doing some basic movements, showing him that all the gears worked in the transmission, as well as the bucket worked by scooping up a patch of dirt, then unloading it and flattening the road back out. A mare came out of a nearby shop, shouting about me tearing up a part of the road, and my only thought was to lean out of the cabin and shout,
"I'm sorry!"
to her. I pushed out of my mind, his rubbing against me and moving in a way that made me touch him while I operated the controls.
Oh, dear goddesses, you're showing Curator right up your rear.
My tail shot down and covered my flanks as much as possible, which enticed a half-hearted sigh of disappointment from Curator.
The way this zebra keeps looking at me, I think I would rather have the guards training rifles in my direction as opposed to those "come here, let me show you a stallion's fun" eyes. It's almost over. He'll make an offer and hopefully you'll be rid of this creep. Just bear with it, Sunrise.
Finally,
Thankfully.
we dismounted and trotted just clear of the SD-3500. This reminded me of something my mother had said as I stared off into space.
Sunrise, hon, we should talk.
Called out Shadow Window. I sighed. I knew every time I heard those words, especially in that tone, something was about to be dropped onto my head. Something that would haunt my dreams for the next 2 weeks. I trotted up the stairs. Out of the utility room, I had been reading the latest issue of my dad's Gear and Bolts. I didn't care that I was covered in grime, grease, and a bit of paint.
Sunrise! Wandering Sunrise!
My mother burst into a fit as she rushed over with a rag and started to try to get some of the mess off my cheek and neck. She tossed the rag at my face with a disappointed snort.
I swear you are never going to get a stallion to like you if you keep ending up covered in your father's work.
I grabbed the rag in a hoof and rubbed it over my face. At least it was warm, wet, and a bit soapy. Great. A dish rag, literally, right off the sink.
Maybe I don't want a stallion.
I shot out, muffled through the cloth.
What was that, young lady? Oh, do you really think there's a mare out there that would like you either? Oh.
My mother scoffed lightly, then regretted it almost immediately. With a soft exhale, she started up again.
Which is what I wanted to talk to you about.
She had gone from scolding to serious in a second.
Sunrise, dear, we need to talk about hearts and hooves.
I kept the rag on my face to hide my ruby red blush. Here, I wasn't green. I was white again. I had started to realize this is a memory. Because my coat and mane had changed colors? How I had ended up with my coat and mane colors changed was beyond me. My tail was the same as Dad's, Orange without the rest of his rainbow. My mane we could explain away as a mixture of Mom's ruby red and Dad's orange, forming a deep blood red. Dad was a very brilliant sunburst white, and Mom was blue as the deep ocean. My coat ended up being pearl white.
Which meant bath time was always extra long. You ever try to get black grease out of white horsehair? Mom, do we have to go over this again? I haven't had any colts flirting with me yet. My distinct lack of a cutie mark sees to that.
I felt the burning of the blush fading away and lowered the rag slowly. I could hear the ringing cries of "Blank, blank!" echoing through my mind. I said a prayer to the goddesses for anything to bail me out. The front door slammed, and I could hear the hoofbeats of my father. They were heavy, and he was shouting.
I swear, she has got to be kidding. They have worked for me for years. I refuse to...
Oh, thank you so much, Celestia. Or Luna, whichever one of you.
Rainbow Rise, hon, calm down. What is going on?
Mom trotted over to him. Our conversation abruptly ended by his outburst. She placed a hoof on his shoulder and looked rather concerned as her midnight black seemed to weave into his golden beige. The two looked like opposites, that they were meant to be together. And here I was, their only daughter, a grease-stained, too old to be a blank filly.
The Ministry of Wartime Technology is what's going on. Who does that mare think she is? She wants me to fire Perilith and Netherbloom. Also Zanika. I just hired him.
He stomped his hoof hard enough that the floor shook with his frustration. He left one slightly cracked kitchen tile where he had struck.
I've worked with Perilith since he came to Equestria before the war. But if I am to be part of this special project, they all have to go. I don't think I get out thinking that every zebra is a spy. And who does this Applejack think she is? Well, I don't care if you are a ministry mare. You aren't going to make friends if you keep driving every zebra away. It's pure racism, and I nearly hit her if not for that oversized bodyguard of hers, Applesnack.
As my father spoke, his voice got harsher, louder, and angrier with every single word, until it came to a crescendo that shook the windows. He stomped his hoof harder and shattered the cracked tile in the kitchen. A piece of that ceramic clattered off a window and into the sink with a distinctive ring. I hung my head and let out a whimper.
Please don't fight. Not right now. I had stuck up for the two zebras earlier, and even felt it was right to do so. I didn't want to see them suffer. Who had come into Dad's work and made him so upset? Maybe I could talk some sense into them. Blank flank and all. Dad, cool it!
I shouted, with more of a whine than a shout, but I still got the point across. My parents looked at me, shocked and wide-eyed. I had never yelled at them. I don't think they had ever even heard me yell. I couldn't believe I had yelled at them. I looked up to see my mom's violet eyes and the harsher rose-colored eyes of my father staring right at me. Both of their jaws slack on the floor.
Who told you that you had to get rid of them?
I demanded at my parents, standing up as high as my legs would allow me.
That ministry mare, Applejack. She said that I had to since they wanted to use my shop to help with some secret project called Dead Tree.
He had a very bitter note in his voice. I looked at him and tilted my head quite a bit, until you would think a crick would form in my neck.
Dead tree? What would someone want with a dead tree?
I asked quite bluntly. Suddenly, I felt like a pair of eyes were staring right at me.
Sorry, I can't tell you, sweetie. I had to keep that part a secret.
He looked away from me, like he was ashamed to face his daughter.
I suppose. Without a choice, I'm going to have to fire those three tomorrow. Hopefully I can give them some extra pay or something to make sure they will be okay until they get new jobs. The Ministry of Wartime Technology has promised to give me compensation and to get me new employees in less than a week.
He let out a resigned sigh and hung his head. I could see the shame in his eyes and on his facial features, hidden behind his frown.
I'm so sorry to ruin your night, you two. I'll let you carry on with your conversation. I need to go write up some statements for the ministry to look over, and to make sure they can see all my financial statements for the last 6 years for tomorrow.
My dad started to leave the kitchen.
Hun, stay for a minute. We need to give her the talk.
Shadow Window called to him as he slowly made his way out. He only turned his head and shook it.
No. When she gets her cutie mark, that is what I told you to wait for. We'll have to give her the hearts and hooves talk later. If I don't make arrangements, I may not have a business tomorrow unless I work at the ministry.
His avoidance of my budding maturity was a bit scary, but he was right. I didn't even have my cutie mark yet. Mares and stallions alike were beyond me when it came to flirting. But it was nice that I had friends now at school, even if I still got picked on about my missing cutie mark. I was told this feeling not to have my special talent yet.
Why was that?
Fine, Rainbow Rise, but before the end of July, we are going to talk to her about hearts and hooves.
My mother declared and followed my dad out of the kitchen. From the sounds of it, I was on my own for the rest of the night. Dinner included.
At least I got away with all the daisy sandwiches I wanted, right?
I heard another voice join my parents. Someone I didn't hear come in the front door. I started upstairs to eat.
You did well, Rainbow Rise. And you won't regret this. You can even rehire them after the war.
Mr. Curator was lost in thought as my head came back out of the clouds. I had shown him all the controls, but my mind was on autopilot, stuck in my own memories as I tried to avoid his gaze and how he looked at me. Finally, I dismounted, and he started talking to Chifundo again. Even with Chifundo, the curator was quite touchy-feely, and then I heard words that filled me with pride.
Well, she runs smoothly. It drove all the way here from the quarry. The spark battery is good. And that little Phyllis sure knew her way around it. Not to mention I'd be the only one in the society to have a fully working Sandok 3000. How does 6,000 caps strike you?
He offered. Buddy was approaching us and stopped dead in his tracks. His heavy forepaws dropped onto the ground with 2 thumbs. I turned my attention behind me to him and Chifundo standing beside each other with mirrored jaw drops. Judging by the expression on Chifundo's and Buddy's faces, 6,000 caps must be a huge amount.
Is that a lot?
I asked them curiously. I shifted around, looking at my 2 friends, then the curator, and then back. Buddy looked down with a snaggle-toothed grin.
Darling, there's just about nothing we can't buy with that many caps. At least we can get better equipment and everything.
I felt my tail poking at my cheek again, and looked to see it held the keys and the instruction manual for the machine. I took them into my mouth and walked up with both the heavy 200-page book as well as the keys.
Wait, you have the instruction manual too?
Mr. Curator said, and I thought for a moment his ghoulified stripes might actually fall off him in awe. I put down the keys and the book at his hooves and looked back up at him.
Yeah, I read the whole thing to make sure I knew how to operate it. There were lots of diagrams. Made it easier to understand. If I wasn't sure on something, I'd open it for reference on the way here.
My sheepish expression could not be hidden, and I felt the burn of blushing return.
You just learned how to operate a bucket crane in only a few hours. You realize that couldn't all be from Dad's wrecker, right? It survived, sealed away in the glove box.
By the stars themselves. They seem to have made this day quite a glorious one. Chifundo, I will offer you another 600 caps since you've got the book. I'm sure the Society, Collegiate, or Eggheads will appreciate exactly what I have here, and will want to study it.
Mr. Curator declared with gusto, and thrust 2 bags of caps out of his saddlebags into Chifondo's hoofs before he could say anything else. I felt a sense of pride coming over me, knowing that somehow all this had been by my hoof. I felt the poke of Mr. Curator's hoof against my shoulder that interrupted any thought I might have. I looked up and didn't care if he was a ghoul who had kept flirting with me. The little filly inside of me would not be contained as I leaped up and wrapped my hoofs around his neck.
Oh, here I thought you might not like me.
Mr. Curator
Squishily.
hugged my neck. Chifondo joined in the hug as well after a moment, much to the Curator's delight.
Extra squishy. Oh dear, I'm not sure how I feel about this. It's like hugging a stuffed animal made of flesh and filled with jello, instead of feathers or cotton.
Nyota, so good of you to join us. Are these your friends?
Mr. Curator cheerily shouted out as he extended a hoof. I didn't look back. I was lost somewhere between realizing that ghoul smells bad and Chifondo needed a bath.
Come on now. You know you want to join in.
The zebra noble encouraged him as I let go of his neck and got back onto all 4 hooves.
Note to self, never hug a ghoul unless you really mean it.
At least that is what my stomach was now saying.
Hello, Curator. Who's yourself and where I can see them?
Nyota responded with a look of disdain. He sounded completely hostile to Curator, and it was the strongest emotion he had expressed yet. He oozed pure anger.
Oh, why do you have to be like that? Surely you and your friends. Wait a moment. Have you made friends? Are these your friends, Nyota?
His tone grew lighter and more friendly, with a sense of surprise that bordered on fanaticism for something wonderful about to happen. The raspy baritone voice seemed like something that would come out of our cartoon.
Traveling companions. I have traveling companions. 5 of them.
Nyota looked at me. I lowered my head, realizing I might not ever hear him call any of us friend.
4 of them. And 1 friend, I suppose.
Wait, did people have to shoot you for you to call them friends? Did the I'm a little foal all short and sad face actually win you over? Am I even allowed to say I have that face anymore?
My thoughts were interrupted by Nyota's next declaration.
I would appreciate it if they were unmolested as well.
You wound me, good sir. I may have quite the hedonistic streak, but I have never done anything anyone did not willingly say yes to. Besides,
Mr. Curator gave a sly smile.
I just bought your Sandog 3000. Do show some respect. I might go back on my transaction.
The amount of indignation in his voice told me that there was something there, even worse than the night the Ministry of Wartime Technology showed up at Dad's work.
Oh, my apologies are given. Now, if your business is done, I'd like my companion and I to go take care of Corner's doctor bill.
Nyota appeared to be quite forceful about what he had to say at this point. He yanked us all away from Mr. Curator and gave a snort to dismiss him. Curator had a dejected look written across his face and raised his nose at Nyota. He turned, walking towards his new trophy without another word. The ghoul noble mounted up into the operator's nest and started the SD-3500, pulling away from us with a slowly rolling of the heavy threads as he left town. Alguacil landed next to us as the machine rolled to the gates.
Come with me. We had to report to the Regulator's office for a bit.
When we arrived, it was more of a tent, reinforced with metal plating. Less for structure and more as armor against bullets. There was just a sign above the entry flap that wasn't even straight, that read, Regulators. A 5-pointed star was crudely drawn next to the title. Inside was a fully sized unicorn mare in an old police uniform from Ponyville. She wore a wide brim hat like Buddy's, but unlike his, Hers had armor plating on it. She got up from her seat behind a long bar with wanted posters dotting a makeshift wooden board behind her.
So I hear y'all killed a sentry bot. Alright, I just need statements from every pony here to... Wait, this little mare did it?
I stepped up and nodded.
Yes, I did. I threw a full brick of dynamite at it, and then my friends here put enough fire into the broken plating that it self-destructed.
I'm still unsure if it was the way I stated it or the fact that it came from my high-pitched voice. But the mare shrugged and held up a hoof.
Okay, you know what? If this little filly says it happened, I don't care. I'll get you your caps so long as the dangerous lot of you agree to cause no trouble. That sound fair?
She walked behind the wooden board into a flap that was located separating off the two segments of the tent. Alguacil crossed his talons, quite satisfied with that answer. The rest of us left, heading back out to the market bazaar. The rest of the afternoon was a blur. Our hard-earned caps were spent re-equipping all of us with armor, weapons, supplies, and other necessities for the road. All of our things got repairs. My duster got armored with metal plating, and I got some sparkle cola. Alguacil found that none of the weapons would fit me properly, so we just had to use what I already had. I found myself outside of the gunsmith 2 hours later, waiting for him to finish working on a customized weapon. Considering I was now holding 12-gauge rounds instead of 20-gauge, the size of them scared me a bit. I stayed at the gunsmith while my shotgun was being worked on, so I was left alone with my thoughts. My first day out of the stable I could remember, and according to my pip-book, it was my 8th, which means I was missing a week of my life.
A week? I was missing 182 years. All that time in stasis. What had I been doing? Who had been taking care of us while we slept? Had the scientists traded knowledge for generations from one to the next? All trained by stable tech to continue their work while we were sleeping? Had I really slept that long in a seemingly endless dream? Could that be where my memory about my shotgun came from? What had stable tech done to me? I mean, there are obvious changes. My coat was pearl white when I went into the stable. What had they done to my parents? They separated us when we went in. Those scientists put me with the rest of the blank flanks.
I checked my flank where the exploding power armor pony was emblazed on me permanently.
Where and when had I gotten my cutie mark? Why was it so violent? Had I become a violent pony and didn't know it?
I held on to that thought for a while, clinging to it as I mulled over all my actions since I woke up. Everything adding up to one answer, right now. No.
Yes, I shot my friend by accident. But something is deeply wrong in Equestria. I know these aren't memories, nor am I in stasis anymore.
The thoughts of my escapes rushed back, and I felt like I was fighting for control, not to drift off into a memory orb. I wanted to go back to the stable escape, but it felt like putting on a recollector and losing touch with reality altogether. I stumped my hoof on my tail to inflict just enough pain to keep me here in the present.
No, this is very real. There are so many pieces of the puzzle missing, and some of them look like they're buried in my pip-book. Where do I go from here?
I kept processing my thoughts as the gunsmith walked outside to where I had taken a seat on his welcome mat and brushed my shoulder with his hoof.
Hey there, little filly. Here you go. Should work just fine now, if you can handle the extra kick.
The old grey-maned stallion passed a heavy version of my shotgun into my hooves. I looked it over. The barrel was bigger, and the hammer was sturdier, and he had also added some extra padding to the stock. A voice that wasn't my own came into my head.
Oh, yay! The angel with a shotgun has returned! Good! Can't wait to see where this leads.
There was a short pause as I searched frantically for the source of the voice.
At least where it leads this time.
It was giggling and playful like a child, wanting to invite you to the playground. Whoever this was, in my head, she wasn't me. That much confirmed it. Was I just crazy?
No, silly. Chifundo knows what I am.
I thought I saw a figure, a very pink pony in my vision, but it had vanished behind a corner before I could get a good look. My eyes wandered around now, looking from Shanty building to building. Everything here looked like it had been constructed out of scrap, random bits of wood, or what used to be vehicles and houses before the war. I got up and started to draw, adding something to the side of the gunsmith's shop. A rainbow sunrise in chalk. Then, I took a moment and drew just what I have heard the pink figure call me. A pony with a halo and wings, dressed in white robes, holding a shotgun in its hooves. Once I was done, I took some gunpowder from the ammo bench nearby and a bit of glue to put on it. Sealing the chalk against the weather, the gunpowder acted to accelerate the glue and sealed it before any dust or dirt could get in. The pristine picture shone and declared,
I was here.
To the world. I didn't know why I did it, or why I decided that was what I would leave behind. I had a whole lot more questions than answers, and a group of friends waiting for me at the end. It seemed like enough for the moment.
Progress to next level, 98%. New trait discovered, random. Your life is random. Events happen with little explanation and with little predictability. Roll with the punches or die under the wave. Your choice.
But not from how far. Our journey's so ruthless, I still bear the scars. And what matters ain't that the world saw its end, but what kind of life we will spend.
I'm trying to be better, but still miss the mark. And each time I save you, I'm left in the dark. No,
when you're in trouble, I'll be by your side. My love for you ain't gonna hide. Inside the fire keeps burning.
Still death is calling. The rivers run dry neath a blackened out sky, and all the dead trees are falling. Creatures we face will see equal judgment or mercy or grace. Decision is needed for those who survive of whether you'll be left alive.
And all bloody work for a hope that we hold of past golden age and its story still told. And what sacred virtues we're able to heed to bring back to those who are in need.